I never thought of myself as the grand gesture guy. Yet a week before our 5th anniversary, I booked a cheaper red-eye back to Dallas, bought sunflowers from a bakery that also sold flowers, and pictured my wife Tessa laughing when I walked through our front door. We both worked too much. She was an event planner with a calendar that swallowed weekends. I was a claims analyst who lived inside spreadsheets. Surprise trips were our movie idea of romance. It felt good to try. The taxi dropped me 2 blocks away just after sunrise. I wanted to sneak in quietly, set the flowers on the kitchen counter, brew coffee, and wait like a sitcom husband. The neighborhood still dozed. Lawn sprinklers ticked. A neighbor's dog yawned through the fence. My key slid into the lock with a tiny scrape I'd always meant to fix. I stepped inside, balancing the bouquet, holding my breath so even the doormat wouldn't squeak. The house smelled like citrus cleaner and something heavy underneath. Cologne, maybe. I set the flowers down and noticed an extra pair of sneakers by the back door. Tessa had friends over sometimes. That didn't raise alarms. The alarms arrived when I heard voices upstairs. Male, not one, but more than one. And Tessa's laugh, quick and bright, a sound I used to chase across crowded rooms. 1,000 explanations flashed through my head in the slow second before I moved. Planning a party, a surprise of her own, a mix-up, anything but what it sounded like. I left my suitcase by the pantry, crept up the stairs, and stopped outside our bedroom. The door was open a few inches. I pushed it with my fingertips until the gap widened. What I saw first was the champagne bottle on the dresser, still sweating. Then a tangle of legs under the comforter. No details, no movie scene, just confusion. Bodies where our quiet used to live. A glance of Tessa's shoulder, a stranger's shaved head. My throat tightened around a sound I refused to make. I eased back, pulse pounding in my ears so loudly I nearly missed the next thing. They were talking. That cologne-heavy voice said, "He's on that flight tomorrow night, right? Plenty of time." Another voice, deeper, calm, answered, "His policy's clean. No exclusions. It pays quick. We just need the file." They kept going, ordinary sentences that pressed on my chest like a weight. They talked about a car accident near a construction zone. They debated between a hit-and-run or a staged roadside breakdown. They used my name as if it belonged to a file folder. Tessa, my Tessa, asked for confirmation on the payout amount with the same focus she used to bring to guest lists and budgets. When she laughed, it sounded like I had never heard it before. I stumbled down the hallway to the guest room and closed the door without letting the latch click. I stood there in the quiet, hands balled so tight my nails dug crescents into my palms. I wanted to storm in and break the bed into kindling. I wanted to shout until the windows rattled. I wanted to walk out and never look back. Instead, a different instinct took hold. Boring, practical. The part of me that spent years combing through insurance claims looking for tiny lies hiding in big stories. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It had 7% battery. I turned on voice memos and held it near the jam. Their conversation kept spilling. Dates, a meetup spot off the interstate, a reference to a burner phone I didn't know existed. When the app stopped because the battery died, I felt both rage and relief. Proof mattered. Evidence mattered. Screaming wouldn't keep me alive. I waited until they quieted down, until footsteps went to the bathroom and the shower started. I slipped back downstairs, collected my suitcase and the flowers, and stepped out into the morning like I wasn't running from my own house. The cab driver hadn't left the neighborhood yet. I waved him down with a smile that felt glued on and asked for a ride to a coffee place near the freeway. Inside the cafe, I plugged my phone into a wall outlet and tried to breathe. I replayed what I'd recorded with headphones because the sound of their voices made me want to throw the phone across the room. The file wasn't perfect, but it captured enough. The policy, the idea of staging, Tessa asking for timelines. I emailed it to my work account and to a new address I made on the spot. Then I called Ethan. Ethan and I had shared a dorm, a beat-up futon, and a lot of cheap pizza. He'd gone from campus security to a detective's badge and the habit of listening more than speaking. When he answered, I said, "I need your help and I can't explain everything yet." He met me in a city park 15 minutes later, wearing a baseball cap and that careful look he reserved for hard stories. I told him everything from the sneakers by the door to the recorded voices to the plan about a car near a construction zone. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he whistled softly. "You're sure about the insurance?" he asked. I look at policies for a living, I said. It's ironclad. We updated it after we refinanced. She knows the numbers. Okay. He rubbed his jaw. You have the recording? I handed him my phone. He listened, face unreadable, then gave it back. This could help, but we need more. Conversations can be explained away by a good attorney. We need texts, emails, transfers, something that shows preparation that can't be mistaken. How do I get that? My mouth tasted like pennies. You don't, he said. Not alone, and you don't go back there until we've got a plan. You stay someplace safe. You let me make some calls. We'll do this clean. No hero moves. The word safe made me think of my house, the one I'd repainted last spring with a roller, while Tessa chose the color by holding up paint chips. I pictured my side of the closet, my baseball glove, my grandfather's watch in a cigar box. My life sat inside that house like furniture in a show window, staged for strangers. I can't just disappear, I said. You're not disappearing, Ethan said. You're being cautious. That's the only revenge that lasts, living long enough to watch them answer for it, with evidence they can't wriggle around. He handed me a hotel key from his pocket. It's for a place by the airport. My department uses it sometimes when we need neutral ground. No one will think to look. Get some rest. I'll text you from a number you don't know. Don't answer unknown calls otherwise. I did what he told me because I didn't trust my own judgment. At the hotel, I sat on the bed and stared at the bland artwork over the desk. I had left a house full of memories and landed in a room that smelled like lemon disinfectant and old carpet. The contrast felt like a joke that didn't land. I tried to sleep and couldn't. I kept thinking of Tessa's hands, the way they used to fix my collar before we left for parties. I replayed our first date when she'd pretended to hate karaoke and then grabbed the mic halfway through my song. I remembered the morning we signed the mortgage, when we took a picture with the keys like tourists. Those memories didn't match the voices upstairs, the calm tone discussing my timeline, the polite inquiry about a payout window. Ethan's text buzzed after noon. It contained a name I didn't recognize and instructions to meet at a small office park near the courthouse. When I arrived, he introduced me to a sharp-eyed woman named Claire who handled digital forensics for the county. She had a kind face and the no-nonsense patience of someone who had seen everything twice. I don't work miracles, she said, but I can help you preserve whatever's on your devices so it holds up if this goes to trial. We start by cloning your phone, then we talk about the house. The house? I asked. If there are cameras, old laptops, storage drives, anything with logs, we want them, she said. And we want them in a way that doesn't tip anyone off. Ethan leaned forward. There's another piece. If they're talking about a car incident, we should assume they have eyes on you. Changing your routine lowers your risk, but it also tells them you suspect something. We need them confident enough to keep communicating. So I walk like a man who doesn't know he's in danger, I said. For a little while, Ethan replied. Long enough to collect what we need. Your policy, what's the value? I told him the amount. Hearing the number out loud made me feel like an invoice. Claire nodded. That's big enough to motivate partners. We should expect messages about splitting money. People always text when they should talk. We formed a plan. I would keep the hotel room but return to my regular office the next day. I'd act tired from travel, nothing more. Ethan would arrange discreet patrol drive-bys near the construction zone those voices mentioned, and he would loop in a prosecutor he trusted without using names. Claire would set me up with a secure cloud repository where any screenshots or recordings would be time-stamped and preserved. We would avoid any confrontation. We would let their confidence become our evidence. Before I left, Claire handed me a small device that looked like a lighter. Audio recorder, she said. Battery lasts all day. If someone approaches you or tries to steer you into a situation, this could be important. That evening, I walked outside the hotel and watched planes rise into a sky smudged with late light. I imagined Tessa at home, maybe blaming the missing flowers on a delivery mix-up, maybe telling those men I was still out of town. The thought stung, but the sting had cooled to something else, a clarity I didn't recognize in myself. I had spent years believing that avoiding conflict kept life smooth. That afternoon taught me different. Sometimes you keep the peace by refusing to be the easy target. At dawn, I shaved, put on a clean shirt, and drove to my office. I parked in my usual spot, bought a donut from the food truck, and nodded to the security guard who always teased me about working too early. I sat at my desk and answered emails like a man with a normal Monday. My hands shook only once when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A minute later, a text arrived from a contact labeled Aunt May, though I didn't have an aunt by that name. The message read, "Landing today? Need pickup?" It came with a location pin near that construction zone off the interstate. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat steady in a way that surprised me. Claire had been right. People always text when they should talk. I took a screenshot and uploaded it to the secure folder. Then I sent Ethan a single line. "They're moving." The day stretched on like a rubber band, thin and dangerous. I left work at 5 on the dot to make it look routine. Traffic crawled. When I pulled into the hotel lot, the sun had dipped low, giving the buildings a copper glow. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Aunt May. This one carried fewer words and more pressure. "Tonight works, don't be late." I knew what they wanted me to do. Drive out there. Stop by the shoulder. Make it easy. I looked at the keys in my hand, at the cheap carpet in the hallway, at my reflection in the elevator doors. I took a breath, not too deep, just enough to steady my voice. Then I called Ethan and said, "It's time." Ethan's voice was steady through the phone. "Stay where you are. Don't answer that message. We'll handle it our way." But waiting wasn't my strength anymore. For years, I'd stayed quiet through every argument, every cutting remark disguised as a joke, every moment when Tessa's eyes drifted somewhere past me. I had spent a marriage waiting for peace that never came. That morning, something in me had already shifted. Waiting wasn't safety. It was surrender. Still, I followed Ethan's orders long enough to meet him 2 blocks from the hotel. His unmarked car sat in the back of a gas station lot, engine idling. Claire sat in the passenger seat, typing quickly on a laptop that glowed against the darkness. "They're serious," she said, not looking up. "Those messages trace back to a prepaid phone purchased 2 days ago under a fake name. It's close to the construction site you mentioned." Ethan handed me a cup of coffee. "We're going to let them think tonight's the night. They'll go to that spot expecting you. But we'll be there first, with cameras, lights, and backup ready. We'll let them dig their own hole." My stomach turned at his phrasing, but I nodded. "And Tessa?" Ethan met my eyes. "If she shows, we catch her too. If not, we'll have enough to bring her in afterward. Either way, she won't be free by morning." The drive to the site felt longer than it was. The world outside the car looked washed out, a strip of road cutting through half-built houses and flickering streetlights. The place was quiet, too quiet for a Friday night. Ethan parked behind a bulldozer. Officers in plain clothes waited nearby, their radios whispering static. "Stay in the car," Ethan said. "You're the reason they're showing up. If they see you, it blows everything." I sat there, watching him and the others melt into the shadows. My heart beat so loudly it drowned out the crickets. Minutes stretched, then headlights appeared down the road. One car, then another. They parked close together, and I recognized the shape of Tessa's silver SUV. Even from this distance, I knew her by the way she moved. Decisive, sharp, confident. She wore a hoodie, but the tilt of her head was unmistakable. 3 men followed her out of the other vehicle. They gathered near the shoulder, pointing toward a section of broken guardrail. Tessa's voice carried faintly through the air, too far to catch the words, but close enough to hear the tone. Businesslike, focused, not a hint of hesitation. The next moments unfolded like a movie I didn't belong in. Ethan's team stepped out, badges flashing in the high beams. Commands filled the night. "Hands up! Drop it!" And the men froze. One tried to run, but tripped over a patch of dirt. Tessa turned, saw Ethan, and her expression crumbled from confusion to realization in a heartbeat. They cuffed her first. She didn't scream or cry, just stared at the ground like it was safer than facing anyone's eyes. The officers led her and the others toward the patrol cars, while I watched from the shadows, gripping the seat until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to feel victorious, but all I felt was hollow. Ethan returned after what felt like an hour. "It's done," he said quietly. "They found printed directions, cash, and your insurance documents in her bag. She signed the claim forms early, intended to file after you died. It's airtight. I nodded, though the words barely registered. She planned everything? Down to the minute. He hesitated. I'm sorry, man. The next few days blurred together. Interviews, statements, paperwork, a carousel of faces that all wore the same expression, pity wrapped in professionalism. I gave them my recordings, the texts, the screenshots Claire had preserved. Tessa refused to speak at first, then tried to twist the story, that it was a misunderstanding, a bad joke, a setup, but the digital trail was too long. Her own words, her own signature, her own greed, all tangled together in a knot she couldn't undo. When the detectives finally let me go home, I expected to find the house unbearable. Instead, it felt foreign, like walking through someone else's life. The framed photos, the couch where we'd watched too many bad movies, even the smell of her perfume still clinging to the curtains. It all felt staged, like props left behind after the play ended. I packed slowly, not because I needed to, but because each item carried a memory that needed to fade before I could move on. I found the wedding album at the bottom of a drawer. For a moment, I almost opened it. Then I closed the drawer again. Some endings didn't need. Revisiting. Weeks passed. The headlines died down. Local scandal, a failed murder for insurance plot, a betrayal too dramatic to be real. My colleagues whispered but didn't ask. Ethan checked in once, then gave me space. Claire sent a message saying the files were secure, the case airtight, and that I could finally breathe. It wasn't revenge that gave me peace. It was survival. I realized the real victory wasn't watching Tessa in handcuffs. It was walking away without becoming the kind of person she had turned into. She'd built her plan on lies and greed. I built mine on truth and patience. In the end, truth always lasts longer. One evening, I drove back to that same park where I'd met Ethan weeks before. The air smelled of rain. Kids played on the swings, their laughter echoing across the grass. Life, ordinary and messy, kept moving. I sat on a bench and let the quiet settle in. My phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. They pled out. You won. I smiled, not a triumphant smile, but a small, tired one. Winning didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like peace after a long storm, like waking up from a nightmare and realizing the house is still standing. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I thought about the word home. It wasn't a place anymore. It was a promise I made to myself. Never again to love someone who thrived on secrets. Never again to ignore my instincts. And never again to underestimate my own strength. I stood, tossed the empty coffee cup into a bin, and walked toward the parking lot. For the first time in months, I didn't look back. Ethan's reply was short. Stay put, we're closing in. But I couldn't. I had spent years swallowing my anger, letting silence fix things that should have been confronted. Not this time. I drove toward the construction site they mentioned, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. The road stretched empty under the orange glow of half-working streetlights. As I got closer, I spotted two cars parked by the barricades, Tessa's SUV and a dark sedan. Through the windshield, I saw her pacing, phone in hand, talking to someone. 3 men leaned against the other car, their movements quick, nervous. I pulled over behind a pile of gravel, hidden in the shadows, and hit record on the small device Claire had given me. Then came headlights, another car approaching fast. It wasn't mine, and the timing was too perfect. In seconds, plainclothes officers poured out, shouting commands. The night exploded in chaos. The men froze. Tessa dropped her phone. One tried to run but tripped over a loose cone. From my hiding spot, I saw her face illuminated by red and blue flashes. Shock first, then recognition, then something worse. Fear. She didn't cry, she didn't plead. She just stared at the ground as they cuffed her perfect calm finally cracking. When Ethan found me afterward, I couldn't speak. It's over, he said. They had everything planned. Your policy papers, burner phones, even a timeline. You saved yourself. I nodded, though it didn't feel like victory. It felt like watching the life I'd built crumble into dust. A week later, I walked through our house one last time. The walls were quiet. The scent of her perfume still clung to the curtains, a ghost of something that never truly existed. I packed what mattered: photos of my parents, my old baseball glove, the watch my grandfather left me, and locked the door behind me. Justice came quietly. Tessa confessed after days of questioning. Her accomplices turned on her, desperate for deals. The district attorney called it an unusual but clear case of premeditated fraud and conspiracy. For me, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about peace. Real peace. I learned that sometimes survival itself is the sweetest payback. When Ethan texted me later, she pled guilty. "You're free." I didn't feel joy. I just felt light. And for the first time in years, I drove with the windows down, letting the night air wash everything away.